In 1901, 5 men posed for what should have been a simple hunting photograph. But when you look closely at this image, you'll notice something that will chill you to the bone. There's a 6th face in the photo, one that shouldn't exist. Dr. Sarah Mitchell had been working as an archivist at the Denver Historical Society for 12 years. She thought she had seen everything in the dusty boxes and forgotten files. That changed on a cold Tuesday morning in March when she discovered a leather portfolio tucked behind a stack of mining records. The portfolio was bound with a leather cord and bore the faded initials TB etched into the cover. Inside was a single photograph, slightly faded but remarkably clear. The image showed 5 men in hunting gear standing proudly beside their camp. They wore heavy wool coats and wide-brimmed hats typical of the era. Their rifles leaned against nearby trees, and the remains of their campfire smoldered in the background. Canvas tents were visible behind them, and hunting trophies hung from makeshift poles. At first glance, it appeared to be nothing more than a documentation of a successful hunting expedition in the Colorado wilderness. But something felt profoundly wrong. Sarah adjusted her desk lamp and pulled out her magnifying glass. As she examined the photograph more carefully, her breath caught in her throat. Behind the group of hunters, barely visible among the shadows of the forest, was another face. A pale, gaunt face with hollow eyes that seemed to stare directly at the camera with an intensity that made her skin crawl. The face didn't belong to any of the 5 hunters. It was positioned too far back to be part of their group, yet too clear to be a trick of light and shadow. Sarah had examined thousands of historical photographs throughout her career, and she knew this was no double exposure or processing error. The face had a translucent quality that defied explanation. Her hands trembling slightly, Sarah flipped the photograph over. Written in faded brown ink were 5 names: Thomas Brennan, William Hartley, James Morrison, Charles Whitmore, and Robert Kane. October 1901, Pike National Forest. 5 names, not 6. Sarah immediately began her comprehensive investigation. She pulled the mining records and cross-referenced them with local newspaper archives from multiple libraries across Colorado. The Brennan Mining Company had indeed sponsored a hunting expedition in October 1901. According to the Denver Post, the 5 men had planned a week-long hunting trip in the Pike National Forest, about 60 miles southwest of the city. They were experienced outdoorsmen who had made similar trips in previous years. What happened next was documented in a series of increasingly desperate newspaper reports that painted a picture of growing panic and confusion. The hunting party was scheduled to return on October 15th. When they failed to arrive at the agreed meeting point, their families contacted the local sheriff's department. Initial searches were casual, assuming the men had simply extended their trip due to good hunting conditions. However, when their business partners reported missed important meetings and financial obligations, the situation became more serious. A formal search party was organized 3 days later, composed of experienced trackers and local volunteers. The searchers found the men's camp exactly as it appeared in the photograph. The campfire was cold, but their equipment remained neatly arranged. Their horses were found grazing in a nearby meadow, unharmed but displaying unusual skittish behavior that troubled the experienced horsemen in the search party. But the hunters themselves had vanished completely without any logical explanation. The search continued for 2 weeks with growing intensity. Hundreds of volunteers combed the forest, following every trail and checking every cave and ravine. They found no trace of the 5 men, no bodies, no signs of struggle, no blood, no torn clothing, no indication of where they might have gone. It was as if they had simply walked into the wilderness and been swallowed by the earth itself. The case made headlines across Colorado and neighboring states. Theories ranged from wild animal attacks to mining accidents to deliberate abandonment of their families and business obligations. Some suggested they had been murdered by claim jumpers or rival mining interests. Others proposed they had fallen into hidden mine shafts or been caught in an avalanche. But none of these explanations could account for the complete lack of evidence. 5 grown men don't just vanish without leaving some trace behind, especially experienced outdoorsmen who knew the terrain well. Sarah discovered something else troubling in the newspaper archives during her exhaustive research. 3 different people reported seeing strange, unexplained lights in the Pike National Forest during the week the hunters disappeared. A rancher named Edwin Price claimed he saw dancing flames that moved through the trees like living things on the night of October 12th. The lights appeared to follow no natural pattern, weaving between the trees in a deliberate, almost intelligent manner. A traveling merchant reported similar sightings on October 13th and 14th, describing the lights as cold fire that cast no warmth. But the most disturbing and detailed account came from a respected Ute tribal elder named Joseph Running Bear. In a brief but chilling interview with the Colorado Springs Gazette, he warned that the specific area where the hunters had established their camp was considered forbidden ground by his people for centuries. According to ancient tribal legends passed down through countless generations, the forest was home to malevolent spirits that fed on human souls and life force. The Ute had avoided that particular valley for generations, marking it as a place where the natural world ended and something darker began. The newspaper dismissed Running Bear's warnings as primitive superstition. Sarah was not so quick to judge. She spent the next several weeks researching the extensive history of the Pike National Forest, diving deep into archives, tribal records, and forgotten newspaper collections. What she found painted a disturbing pattern that stretched back decades. The area where the hunters camped had been the site of unexplained disappearances for generations. In 1887, a family of homesteaders vanished from their cabin without warning, leaving behind a still-warm dinner on the table and their livestock wandering freely in the yard. In 1894, 2 experienced prospectors disappeared while searching for silver deposits in the area. Their pack mules were found days later, still carrying supplies but showing signs of extreme agitation and fear. Each incident followed the same inexplicable pattern. People would enter that section of the forest with specific plans and purposes, then simply vanish without any trace of their fate or final moments. Sarah began to suspect that the 6th face in the photograph might be connected to these disappearances. She enlisted the help of a photography expert at the University of Colorado. Professor David Chen examined the image using modern digital enhancement techniques. What he found was even more unsettling. The enhancement revealed details that weren't visible to the naked eye. The mysterious face showed signs of severe malnutrition and dehydration. The eyes were sunken, the cheeks hollow, and the skin had a waxy, translucent quality. Most disturbing of all, the face appeared to be floating several inches above the ground, as if the body it belonged to was somehow suspended in midair. Professor Chen also discovered something else. Hidden in the shadows behind the mysterious face were what appeared to be additional figures. The digital enhancement revealed glimpses of clothing and limbs that suggested at least 3 or 4 other people were present in the forest that day. Like the first face, these figures had the same gaunt, starved appearance. Sarah realized she was looking at evidence of something far more sinister than a simple hunting accident. She returned to the tribal archives and spoke with descendants of the Ute people who had once lived in the area. They shared stories that had been passed down through generations, tales of an ancient evil that dwelled in the deepest part of the forest. According to these legends, the entity was not quite alive, but not quite dead. It existed in a state between worlds, feeding on the life force of anyone foolish enough to enter its domain. The victims didn't die immediately. Instead, they were drained slowly, kept alive but gradually weakened until they became hollow shells of their former selves. The most chilling detail was what happened to the victims after they died. Their spirits were trapped, forced to serve the entity and help it lure new victims into the forest. They would appear to travelers as lost souls in need of help, drawing them deeper into the wilderness where they would meet the same fate. This explained the additional figures in the photograph. They weren't just random spirits, they were the previous victims of the entity, the homesteaders from 1887, the prospectors from 1894, and countless others who had vanished over the decades. But Sarah's investigation revealed an even more disturbing truth. The entity's influence wasn't limited to the forest. Several people who had participated in the search for the missing hunters reported strange experiences in the years that followed. They suffered from recurring nightmares, unexplained illnesses, and an overwhelming compulsion to return to the forest. 3 of the searchers eventually did return to the Forbidden Valley, and they were never seen again. The photograph itself seemed to carry some of the entity's malevolent influence. Sarah noticed that she had begun experiencing vivid dreams about the forest. In these dreams, she found herself walking through the trees, following a barely visible trail that led deeper and deeper into the wilderness. She could hear voices calling to her, promising to show her the truth about what happened to the hunters. She also began to notice changes in her reflection. Her face appeared gaunt and pale, with dark circles under her eyes. Her colleagues commented that she looked tired and suggested she take a vacation, but Sarah knew that no amount of rest would cure what was happening to her. The photograph was claiming another victim. Sarah made a difficult decision. She sealed the photograph in a lead-lined container and locked it away in the society's most secure vault. She also created a detailed record of her investigation, documenting everything she had learned about the entity and its victims. But even with the photograph secured, Sarah continued to feel its influence. The dreams became more frequent and more vivid. She found herself researching travel routes to the Pike National Forest and calculating how long it would take to reach the Forbidden Valley. One night, she woke up in her car, parked at a trailhead leading into the forest. She had no memory of how she got there or what she planned to do. It was only the intervention of a park ranger who noticed her sitting in the dark that prevented her from walking into the wilderness. Sarah realized that the entity's influence extended far beyond what she had initially understood. The photograph wasn't just evidence of what had happened to the hunters. It was a trap, designed to draw new victims to the forest. She made arrangements to transfer the photograph to a specialized facility that dealt with cursed or dangerous artifacts. The transfer was carried out under strict security protocols, with multiple witnesses and protective measures in place. But even after the photograph was removed from the Historical Society, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She would catch glimpses of pale faces in her peripheral vision, always just out of direct sight. She heard whispers in languages she didn't recognize and felt cold spots in rooms that should have been warm. The entity had marked her as its next victim. Sarah's final report on the 1901 hunting party incident remains classified in the archives of the specialized facility. According to her colleagues, she took an extended leave of absence shortly after completing the transfer of the photograph. Her apartment was found empty, with no signs of struggle or forced entry. Her car was discovered 3 days later, abandoned at the same trailhead where the park ranger had found her weeks earlier. Sarah Mitchell joined the long list of people who had vanished in the Pike National Forest. But her investigation had revealed the truth about the 1901 photograph and the fate of the 5 hunters. They hadn't simply disappeared. They had been claimed by something ancient and evil, something that continued to hunt for new victims. The photograph serves as a warning and a trap. It documents the moment when 5 men encountered an entity beyond human understanding. The 6th face in the image isn't just evidence of their fate, it's a glimpse into a realm where the dead don't rest and the living are never truly safe. Today, the Pike National Forest remains open to the public. Thousands of hikers and campers visit the area each year, unaware of the danger that lurks in its deepest shadows. The Forbidden Valley still exists, still waiting for new victims to answer its call. The entity continues to feed, and the photographs continue to multiply. If you ever find yourself hiking in the Colorado wilderness and come across an old photograph half buried in the dirt, don't pick it up. Don't look too closely at the faces in the image, and whatever you do, don't let curiosity draw you deeper into the forest. Some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved. The 1901 hunting party learned this truth too late. Their faces, frozen in that final moment of their lives, serve as a permanent reminder that some places are forbidden for good reason. The 6th face in their photograph continues to watch, waiting for the next person brave enough or foolish enough to seek the truth. What started as a simple documentation of a hunting trip became evidence of something far more sinister and otherworldly. The photograph remains one of the most disturbing artifacts in the collection of cursed items, a window into a world where the natural laws don't apply and human life holds no value or meaning. The image serves as a permanent record of the moment when 5 confident men encountered something beyond human comprehension. Their faces, captured in that final moment of their mortal lives, display a subtle tension that becomes more apparent upon closer examination. Thomas Brennan's smile seems forced, his eyes slightly wider than they should be. William Hartley's hand grips his rifle with white knuckles, as if he sensed approaching danger. If this story has fascinated you as much as it disturbed me, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more investigations into history's most mysterious and terrifying cases. Share your thoughts in the comments below, but remember to approach such stories with caution. Some stories are more than just entertainment. They're warnings from the past, reminders that not all mysteries should be solved, and some doors should never be opened. The 6th face continues to watch from the shadows, waiting patiently for the next person brave enough or foolish enough to seek the truth behind the 1901 hunting party's final photograph.